Ever get that feeling like a few minutes into a movie or a book where you think, okay, I am hooked. Tell me more.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the magic of a strong story premise,
Yeah.
and that's what we're going to crack the code of today.
I love it.
So we're diving into excerpts from a source called The Premise, First Two Steps,
Okay.
which, I mean, already sounds like...
It's very Mystery
Yes.
Insider advice. It does. It does. And it really gets to the heart of what makes a story work, you know? Like,
Yeah.
we all know a good story when we see one, but what is it about that initial spark, that core idea that hooks us,
Right, it's like that,
that makes us want to go along for the ride?
what if dinosaurs roamed the earth today, but like in a theme park?
Exactly.
And you're instantly like,
Tell me more.
yes!
I need to know how this
I'm
one...
invested, yeah.
Yep. And that's Jurassic Park.
Mhm.
I mean, such a classic example of a strong premise, right?
Totally.
It's not just dinosaurs are back. It's the what if that really gets us thinking.
Yeah, and I think that's what this source really nails. It's not about summarizing the plot.
Right.
It's about identifying that DNA of the story.
It's like the seed, that little kernel of an idea that everything else grows out of.
Yes. And like, speaking of seeds, bad seed, bad foundation. If you don't have a strong premise, it's like building a house on sand.
Oh, it's going to crumble.
Exactly. It doesn't matter how...
It doesn't matter how nice the windows are.
Exactly.
If the foundation is shaky, the whole thing's going down.
100%. But you know, what I find really helpful about this source is that it doesn't just throw these concepts at us.
Right.
It actually breaks down iconic movies to show us the premise in action.
I love that.
So let's take, for example, The Godfather.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, on the surface,
Classic.
we've got a crime family, right?
Yeah. We've got the Corleones. We've got...
But what is it about The Godfather that makes it...
It's more than just gangsters, though.
Yes.
Right. It's got that extra oomph.
It's Shakespearean, right? You've got this family drama, this rise and fall of power.
It's true. It's almost like...
Betrayal.
Yeah.
American royalty.
Exactly. And I think that's where the premise comes in. It's not just about the plot points. It's about the underlying question or statement that gives it weight.
Because you could have a very straightforward, like, you know,
gangster versus gangster revenge story.
And it would be entertaining. But The Godfather just, it sticks with you.
It sticks with you.
It's got that extra layer.
It's got themes. It's got resonance.
100%.
And it all stems from that strong premise.
Okay, so we've talked about The Godfather.
Okay.
But let's throw another classic into the mix.
Okay.
Tootsie.
All right, let's do it. So we've got Dustin Hoffman dressing as a woman to get a role.
Hilarious.
On the surface, comedy gold.
Yes. But again...
But it's more than that.
It's more than that.
It's more than just a man in a dress.
Right. It's not just a goofy,
kind
of one-note joke.
And I think this source makes a good point here. The premise of Tootsie isn't just about the disguise. It's about what this experience reveals, about gender roles, about societal expectations, about how we perceive each other.
Right. And it makes you think.
It makes you think, yeah.
Long after the credits have rolled.
Exactly.
So, okay.
Yeah.
We've established that a strong premise is crucial.
Crucial, yeah.
But how do we, the non-Spielbergs, the non-Coppolas of the world, how do we actually come up with these golden nuggets of story DNA?
Right. Because it can't just be magic, can it?
Right. Is there a formula?
Because if there was, we'd all be, living in our Malibu mansions right now.
Exactly.
But the source we're looking at, the premise, First Two Steps, suggests that it's not magic, but it's also not about just randomly throwing ideas at a wall.
Okay.
There's a method to the madness.
I like that.
It's a two-step process
that
encourages us to look both inward and outward. So it's a balance of introspection and then kind of exploding those ideas outward.
That's interesting because it makes me think almost like before you can even start building that house.
Yes. Love that analogy.
You have to kind of survey the land.
You got to know the terrain. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What are we working with here?
Exactly.
What kind of foundation can we even build?
100%. 100%.
And that's what this first step is all about.
Okay.
It's about looking inward.
All right. So get introspective.
Get introspective, which might sound a little, touchy-feely for some people.
Sure.
But it's actually incredibly practical.
Okay.
Because what they're suggesting is that you tap into things that could change your life.
Okay.
Things that you're passionate about, things that keep you up at night, your desires, your fears.
Wow.
These are often the things that make for the most compelling stories.
Yeah, it's like tapping into that like primal
Yeah,
part of
it's
it.
primal, it's visceral,
Yeah.
and it's those stories that tend to resonate most deeply with audiences
Yeah.
because they come from a place of truth.
So it's not just about finding a cool concept.
Right.
It's about finding a concept that speaks to you
Exactly.
on a personal level.
It has to matter to you before it can matter to anyone else.
Right. And I guess that's what makes it,
Authentic.
yeah, authentic. I
Yeah.
like that. But I have to say, the thought of like really digging deep into my soul
Sure.
to unearth these like golden nuggets,
It can be daunting.
it's a little daunting.
It can be a little scary, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, am I really going to find anything down there?
Well, and that's where I think the source offers some really good advice. They're not saying you have to, like, bare your soul to the world or anything.
Yeah.
They're just saying, start by asking yourself, what kind of story would I love to see?
Okay.
Like, what movie do you wish existed that you haven't seen yet?
Okay.
And don't censor yourself. Don't judge yourself. Just let those ideas flow freely.
So if my 10-year-old self had a like crazy what if scenario,
Put it on the page.
it's still valid.
It's still valid.
Yeah.
Because sometimes our most kind of childlike wonder, those things that we've pushed down as we've gotten older, those are the most interesting, most original ideas.
Okay, so don't censor those early ideas.
No, embrace them.
Embrace them.
Yeah.
But it's not just about those new ideas, right?
Right. And this is something I found really helpful. They actually suggest going back to old ideas,
Oh, interesting.
stories that you might have started and abandoned.
Oh, like those abandoned drafts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because sometimes there are these little gems hidden in there, these kernels of truth that you can dust off and re-examine with fresh eyes.
So it's like almost like revisiting those old journals.
Exactly. And you might find that there are recurring themes.
Yeah, like how Stephen King always seems to circle back to those
Yes.
small town horrors.
It's those patterns that reveal your unique voice as a writer.
Yeah, because even when he tries to do something different,
It always comes back, right?
it always comes back to
That's
that.
your sweet spot. That's your thing.
100%.
And the audience can feel that authenticity, that genuine connection to the material.
Okay, so that's the internal, the introspective,
The internal work, yeah.
but then there's the outward.
Yes, because it's not enough to just have these ideas rattling around in our heads.
Right.
We have to turn them into something tangible, something we can actually work with.
So we got to take those sparks and
Fan the flames.
yes, turn them into a fire.
And that's where the what if game comes in.
Ooh, okay. So this is where we take those raw, maybe still kind of fuzzy ideas
Yeah.
and really start brainstorming.
Exactly. This is where we start to play.
Okay. And the what if game, that's where the fun begins.
It is. It's where we let our imaginations run wild.
So where do we even begin? Like, how do we apply this what if technique?
Well, the source gives us a really cool technique using classic films as examples.
Okay.
And one that they highlight is Witness.
Okay, yeah.
Now, imagine for a second, it's just another crime drama.
Okay.
We've got our cops, we've got our criminals,
Right, standard.
but then they ask this one question. What if our child witness
Okay.
is thrust into the heart of a pacifist Amish community?
Ooh, that changes everything.
Right? Suddenly the stakes are higher.
Yeah.
The contrast is
That's-
more intense.
Because you've got this
This clash of worlds.
yes, this innocent child who's witnessed this horrible crime.
And now they're surrounded by people who believe in nonviolence.
Right, and it's like how do you even
It's brilliant.
How those
It's-
two-
and that one what if,
Yeah.
that one question
Yeah,
injects so much tension and thematic depth.
100%, and it all spirals outward from
Right.
that one question.
That's the power of what if.
Yeah.
You take that initial spark, in this case, child witness,
Okay.
and you push it further and further with those questions.
And I imagine it's the same with something like Tootsie. Like
Yeah.
it could have just been, like the one-dimensional, haha, a man in a dress.
Right, and that's funny, but for how long?
Exactly.
But by asking, what if this experience forces him to confront his own biases? What if it leads to genuine personal growth?
Mm.
Boom, you've got a comedy with heart.
Right, and it adds that extra.
It deepens the story.
dimension.
It deepens the story.
Exactly.
It allows us to connect with the characters on a deeper level.
And I'm starting to see how those what if questions, they're almost like those like magnifying glasses where you're
Yes.
taking a simple idea
You're zooming in.
and you're just,
You're finding the facets, the hidden depths.
yes. And all these possibilities just start revealing themselves.
And it's through those possibilities that you find the truly great premises, the ones that resonate.
But how do we make sure that we're not just like going off on...
Right, because you can't just ask random what-if questions.
Right.
It has to be purposeful.
Right. So how do we make sure that our what-ifs are actually leading us?
Exactly. How do we make sure they're leading us to that strong one-sentence premise?
Yes.
That's where things get really interesting. It's like each what-if is a layer of meaning, right? You're going deeper and deeper into the heart of the story.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
So take The Godfather again.
Okay.
It could have just been, what if a son takes revenge for his father?
Right. Pretty standard.
But instead they asked, what if this family, these gangsters, operated with the gravitas and legacy of, like, America's shadow royalty?
Ooh, okay, now we're talking.
Suddenly you've got this whole other level of storytelling going on.
Because it's not just a revenge story anymore.
Exactly. It's about the rise and fall of an empire.
It's Shakespearean, like you were saying.
Exactly. It's got that weight, that thematic depth.
It's like that one what-if question just unlocked a whole new dimension.
And it's not just The Godfather. The source also talks about Chinatown.
Okay.
Which, again, could have been a pretty straightforward detective story.
Right, but it's so much more than that.
Because they asked, what if the crimes he uncovers, they're not just isolated incidents, but symptoms of something rotten at the core of the city itself?
Ooh, I like that.
It's like, what if a whole system is built on corruption and greed?
And suddenly the stakes are so much higher.
Exactly. It's not just about solving a case. It's about exposing the dark underbelly of the American dream.
Right, and that's what makes it so compelling, so relevant, even decades later.
Because it's tapping into these universal themes of power, morality, the illusion versus reality.
It's making you think.
Yeah. And that's what good storytelling does, right? It stays with you long after the credits roll.
But, you know, not every story has to be so dark and gritty.
Right. What about those feel-good movies, those pure escapes?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what about a movie like Big?
Perfect example.
Because on the surface, it's just a fun, wish fulfillment fantasy.
Right. I wish I was a grown-up.
But even there, the source points out that the what-if question adds this extra layer of depth.
Because it's not just, what if a kid becomes an adult overnight? It's, what if that speaks to this universal longing we all have, to recapture the joy and wonder of childhood?
Oh, I see what you mean.
It's tapping into something much deeper, something that resonates with everyone, regardless of age.
It's like that's the real heart of the story, that yearning for a simpler time.
Exactly. And by placing him in a toy company, surrounding him with all these symbols of childhood,
Yes, brilliant.
it becomes more than just a silly comedy. It's a reminder that adulthood doesn't have to mean losing our sense of playfulness, our sense of wonder.
Yeah. Man, thinking about all these movies, like, I'm starting to see them in a whole new light.
Right. It's like you've got this new lens to view them through.
Yeah, and it's all because of that one powerful premise.
That one what if, that sparked the entire story.
And it's making me realize that this isn't just about Hollywood, right?
Exactly. This applies to way more than just movies.
Because we're telling stories all the time.
Every single day.
Yeah, like whether it's a conversation with a friend.
Or a presentation at work.
Or even just like sending an email.
Think about it. We're constantly trying to convey information to engage our audience.
So you're saying even my emails could benefit from a strong premise.
What if instead of just diving into the details, you started with that one compelling question?
Okay, I see what you mean.
Or that one key takeaway you want them to remember.
So instead of like, hope this email finds you well, it's more like, what if I told you there was a way to increase productivity by 50%?
Exactly. You're hooking them, making them want to know more.
It's like that opening scene, that first impression.
And by subtly applying these storytelling principles, we can elevate even the most mundane communication.
So it's not just about writing the next blockbuster.
It's about recognizing that we are all storytellers in our own right.
I love that. It's like this deep dive has given us a whole new perspective.
And that's the beauty of it, right? These conversations can spark these aha moments that change how we see the world.
Totally. And speaking of aha moments, this has been honestly kind of eye-opening.
Right. It really makes you appreciate the craft of storytelling.
It does. Like, imagine Witness without that culture clash, or Tootsie without those deeper themes about gender.
Exactly. They'd be, well, I don't know.
They'd be fine, I guess.
But would they be classics?
Probably not.
Probably not.
And it all comes back to that premise.
That one strong premise that informs every other choice.
And what I'm realizing is it's not about, like, following a formula.
Right, because there's no magic formula for a surefire hit.
Yeah, it's more like you got to find those what-if questions.
It's about exploration, about pushing those initial sparks of inspiration until something clicks.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like you're digging for treasure.
And sometimes you got to dig through a lot of dirt to find those gold nuggets.
Totally.
Yeah.
But you know what's amazing? We've been talking about movies this whole time.
Right, because there's such great examples of storytelling in action.
But this premise thing, it's not just for Hollywood.
I'm absolutely not.
Yeah.
This is a tool that anyone can use.
Okay, so how do we apply this to, like, everyday life?
Think about it giving a presentation at work.
Okay, yeah.
What if you started with a strong premise, a hook that grabs your audience's attention?
Instead of just diving into the bullet points.
Exactly. You're telling them a story, even if it's about quarterly earnings.
So even if I'm not writing a screenplay, I can still use these storytelling principles.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, we're all trying to connect, to engage.
To make people feel something.
Exactly. And a strong premise, that's what draws people in. That's what makes them care.
Wow, this has been quite a journey.
It has. From Hollywood to, well, everywhere else.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of premises, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
You know, I think it's this. Pay attention to the stories you love, the ones that really resonate with you.
Okay.
And see if you can identify that core premise, that what-if question that sparked it all.
Like reverse engineer the magic.
Exactly. And then ask yourself, how can I apply that same kind of thinking to my own life, my own work, my own stories, even if they're just for me?
That is fantastic advice. So to all our listeners out there, keep asking those what-if questions, keep exploring, and keep digging for those golden premises. And until next time, happy diving.